Hello, parents. We are the Tavon,
I'm Davon.
and we are the Woods twins. We just come in just to talk to you guys for a few minutes. We're not going to be too long, but we're not going to be too short either. But we just want to come and just encourage you guys and just to give you guys our inside scoop of being a foster. Being in the system and just give you guys our take on it. So first and foremost, I would just tell you to ask yourself, why do you want to foster or adopt a child? That would be my first question. Know your why, because getting into this is it's not an easy road. It's a lot of bumps. It's a lot of dealing with a lot of kids that went through so much, probably more than you have ever went through. But I would just say, just ask yourself why. Like, hey, why am I doing this? Why would I like to do this? Why?
Yeah, most definitely. Ask yourself why. And also getting these kids, the type of kids that you're dealing with, these aren't regular, normal kids. I look at parents now, how they deal with their biological kids and how frustrated their biological kids make them. So you gotta think about it. Now you're taking on the role of somebody else and you getting this child that's not your biological child. And that's why you see a lot of kids get killed in the foster care system. A lot of kids get abused because a lot of parents don't even know how to deal with their own kids, and now you're taking on somebody else's child, and that child is acting out of emotion, and a lot of these kids are just hurt, they're broken. These kids just want somebody that's going to understand them, somebody that's going to talk to them. So I would just say knowing what these kids need. Because oftentimes our adopted parents always say, well, we provided a roof over your head, food on the table. But to be honest, I can get a roof over my head and food on the table from anywhere. I can go to a restaurant and get that. But you can't find love anywhere you go. You can't go to the restaurant and get love. Love is something that's within you, so you gotta understand, like, hey, I know that I'm taking on this role, so I gotta love these children and accept these kids for who they are. You know, don't try to change a child how you want them to be. Accept them with their flaws, their behavior issues, and as you continue to love these children, they will continue, as you continue to love them, that's when they'll start shaping and forming into however they're gonna be in life. So I would just say, just make sure that you're loving these kids, love on them, tell them that if they're a young man, say, hey, you're a nice, handsome man. If they're a young lady, hey, you're beautiful. Stuff like that for kids like us mean a lot. Little stuff like, hey, man, strong man, you nice looking man, you look sharp today. When they go to school, give them those words because it's going to take them a long way. And when they go into school, they won't be walking around like, man, I'm ugly. They'll have that confidence, and that's what you got to do. You got to push that confidence in them. So when they get our age, they'll be shooting for the stars.
And I would say, just to know what you're signing yourself up for, you can't expect to go to NFL doing baseball things. So you gotta know what you're signing yourself up for. You gotta know the things that come with it. It's a lot of stuff that come with it. These kids have a lot of baggage.
A lot of baggage.
That's just the truth. They have a lot of baggage. We had a lot of baggage. So by you accepting this position, you have to be willing to accept all the baggage. And you not only accept it, but you got to know what to do with the baggage. Mm-hmm. You can't just put stuff in the trash bag and just let it sit in your house. That stuff gonna stink up the house. You got to know what to do with that trash bag. You got to take it to the trash. So you got to know what to do with these kids. You got to know how to handle them. You got to know how to love them. And you got to love them strong. These kids are broken. Like, just imagine a piece of glass falling and it's shattered. You got to know how to put that piece of glass all the way back together. And guess what? It's patience. You can't just rush and because you're going to get cut. You're going to get hurt in the process of trying to put all that glass together. So you got to learn how to slowly put those pieces of glass together. And slowly but surely, those kids will open up because these kids go through a lot of stuff, a lot of traumatic things. And you got to know how to deal with them. And I would just say, just don't give up. And if you give up quick and if you just throw in the towel quick,
this ain't it.
This not for you. I'm sorry. But just know how to love them. That's one thing that we lack. We didn't get no love. We grew up. Me and Davon never told each other we love each other.
Yeah.
So
until we got about 20,
Like
about 20, no, even later than that, about probably like, we 26 now, comfortably, probably like 24, 25. So that was just about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, so we didn't know how to express love.
Love was just like a foreign, you know, like how, you know, we speak English and you try to go to like Mexico and they speaking Spanish and all that stuff. That's how love was to us. We didn't understand what it was. We didn't knew what love was. Like, it was so foreign to us. But another thing I like to say to the parents is that don't look at these kids, don't look at it as like a draft, like you know, you got NFL draft and stuff, and I seen that a lot because I do a lot of posting of kids, and kids, people be like, I want this child, I want this specific child. But when I see people doing that, I'm like, okay, what about this other child? And that's how it is in the system. It's sort of kind of like a NFL draft or an NBA draft. It's like they trying to only pick the ones that the top 10 draft picks. They trying to get the kids that look perfect in their eyes, but what about the kids that got learning deficiencies? What about the kids that got mental health problems? What about the kids that are handicapped? A lot of people stray away from those kids, and it's like, if you gotta look at foster care and adopting and be like, you know, I only want this type of kid, this specific kid, you shouldn't do it. Because it's over 400,000 kids in the foster care system. And you can't just look at it as a draft, like I'm only gonna pick this child. I only want a child that's 2 and under. It's like, at the end of the day, it's so many kids that just need love and a stable home. So I would just say, don't look at it as you trying to pick the best kid in the foster care system. Don't look at it that way. Look at all these kids the same, because all of these kids are broken, and all these kids just want one thing. They just want a family, a forever family. And a lot of people will tell these kids, like, hey, I'm gonna be your forever mom, your forever dad. And these kids start acting up. They don't know how to control these kids. And guess what? Them people start doing this. Well, I don't know about this. And that's how you see a lot of kids end up going back into care, because a lot of people end up changing their minds, because it's like when you're doing those interviews and stuff like that, those kids not really gonna be open. Those kids gonna just be kind of like shy, laid back. But when you start getting those kids in your house, you start spending time with them, you start seeing how those kids really are, because these kids are now becoming comfortable. But I would just say, just make sure that y'all, when you getting these kids, just make sure that you're loving on them. That's the biggest thing: love, support, and just building them up. Just building them up.
And I would say too, Mr. Tan said, he was talking to me yesterday, said something powerful. He said that a lady adopted some kids, and she was like 80 years old, and the kids were young. And he was saying, like, a lot of these parents that they get the kids, they don't want to let them go, but knowing that letting them go is for the better, to put them where they really need to be, because like you having them is not doing them any justice, it's not helping them or bettering them. So it's best to just let that child go and let them get somewhere that they can really grow in and blossom in. And I would just say, just like I said earlier, just to know what you're getting yourself into. That's my one of my biggest things, and just just don't give up so quick. If you want to get into it, just to keep pushing and be that person that child really needs, because us kids that go through the system, man, it's hard. It breaks my heart every time I look back of how we got treated. And I'm like, man, we got taken away from our biological family, placed into a system that's supposed to help us. Like, the foster care system is supposed to help us, but then again, you have us 2 innocent kids who got removed from our family at birth because our mom was on drugs. We only weighed 2 pounds, innocent. We got placed with a family, and the family treated us like that. It had us growing up. I'm like, are you like, why would y'all get us if y'all gonna treat us like this? Like, it don't make sense to me. So I would just say, man, to just know what you're getting yourself into, and just have it in your heart, know your why, and because these kids deserve the world, and you should give it to them. And if not, choose another field, you might have to do something else, but these kids deserve the best. They deserve the best of the best. They deserve to get treated like kings and queens, little kings and queens. because they are the next generation, so they deserve it.
And another thing, Mr. Ted made a great point. He was just basically saying like a lot of people, a lot of parents, you know, they end up adopting and fostering kids for the wrong reason. Like they end up like can't have kids anymore, or you know, all of their kids grown, and they're like, you know what, little Johnny, he needs somebody to play with. Like, no, you should, because now you're not doing it for the right reason. So I would just say, like, if you're gonna adopt a child, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Don't use these kids to clean up the house, or don't use these kids to do what you don't want to do, because guess what? Now what you're doing is, now you're not playing you're not doing your responsibility as a parent. You're adopting a child, you're fostering a child, so they could take on your responsibility. So now you can sit in the lazy boy. Now you can watch Netflix all day. Now you can go shopping whenever you want to, because you know little Katie is at the house making sure everything is clean. So don't look at these kids as just a check or just somebody to come clean up. Hire a maid, or you do the job. You know, these kids aren't maids. These kids aren't do boys. So I would just say, if you're gonna do this full time, just make sure that these kids have the opportunity to be kids. Spend time with them. Take them to Universal Studios. Take them on vacations. Majority of these kids, when me and Tavon used to go to vacations when we was younger, you should see how our adopted mom would look at us, and it's like we do something, she just, you know how you disgusted with something? Like you see some food or somebody throw up and you just like, that's just how she used to look at us.
And we used to be like,
we didn't do nothing.
We used to go to Hilton Head every
We used to hate it.
And we couldn't even be a kid. Like we'd do something. We kids, we was young, so we playing around and stuff, and like we, just like Davon said, it's just the look of us. I was so afraid of my adopted parents. Like all they had to do was look, and I'm like, oh man, like.
And they got to a point where it was like sometimes we were scared to go home. No child should be afraid to go home. I don't care what they done. They should not be afraid to go home. We used to be so afraid to go home. It's like, man, like sometimes I just felt like running away, but I was so afraid. I was afraid to speak up. I was afraid to tell anybody at school that was happening. I was afraid to even tell anybody, because our adopted parents were so controlling, trying to control our life, tell us what we're gonna do, how we're gonna do it, and when we're gonna do it. So it's like they were just trying to control us, and it just got to a point where it's just like they would believe everybody but us. And how do you think that make a child feel? They can't even go to their own parent. So we used to try to go to our cousin's house, spend the night at other people's house, and whenever we did that, our mom used to shut it down because they didn't want us to get close to anybody else that was not them. So I would say, let these kids be kids. Let your child have a voice. Let your child tell their side of the story. Just because you're a parent don't mean you know it all. And I feel as though that's where a lot of parents lack at, because they never give these kids an opportunity to tell their side of the story. Number one, they just start beating, start yelling, but sometimes you just gotta sit these kids down, because one thing about kids, and Taylor is about to be 3, and I look at her and I'm like, wow, these kids are like sponges. They soak up everything. And a lot of times parents, they hear the kids say something, they be like, you lying. These kids see a lot of stuff. Sometimes they see the stuff you doing. I seen my mom and dad messing around with and doing crazy stuff that they shouldn't been doing and it's just like these kids watch everything. They may not say it, but these kids watch everything you do. And the behaviors that you do, they're gonna copy it. So if they see you out there chugging whatever and smoking a cigarette, guess what? They're gonna start doing the same thing you're doing. If they see you got different men in the house, coming in the house, different women, that's what they're gonna pick up on. They see you doing all this stuff, this negative stuff, they're gonna pick right up to it. So I would just say, just be that positive role model for these kids.
And another thing too, just make sure that you showing them how they should live, because we grew up, my parents, we grew up in church, but man, when I tell you it was so scary for me, like just being treated one way in the house.
And
when my parents get to church, it's like everything all holy, and as a kid, I started to understand. I said,
that ain't right.
That's people not supposed to do that, and I realized that at a young age, and that what drew me away from church. I'm like, no, this ain't right, because I'm like, my parents treat us so bad in the house, but when we get to church, it's like they treat us good in church, and I'm like, that don't make sense. If y'all gotta do it both. I would rather you treat me bad in the house and at church versus treating me bad at home. Then when we get to church, everything all good. So I would just say, man, just to make sure that you are setting that, that stand and letting the kids know, like, hey, like, this is how we living, and you showing them the positive way of living. And yeah, that's.
Well, first I want to thank you guys for coming this week, for talking to our kids, for spending time with them, just hanging out, and also talking with our families. At Journey Home, one of our philosophies is, we believe in building relationships. That's our goal as staff. Ted and I, when we started Journey Home, that was our number one goal. We're going to build relationships with kids, with families, with one another, and that's always been so very important to us. And it trickles down with everything that we pretty much do. We believe in building that relationship. We believe in connecting before you correct, because as you've said, these kids have lots of baggage. They come with a lot of things, and you can't fix everything. Sometimes you can't. You might help fix little pieces of it, but you might not be able to fix everything. But if you can build a relationship with that kid, then they always have someone that they can come back to. So in dealing with like discipline, for example, we believe in connect before you correct. So what is your take on discipline practices? Do you feel that all kids should be disciplined the exact same way? Should, if you count the potato chips for everybody, is there a difference between fair and equal?
I would say when it comes to discipline, and growing up with the way we got disciplined, it was just like everything we do, we got a beating for. And it's just like, you gotta know the child that you're dealing with, and that way you know how to correct them, because everything don't deserve a beating. In my opinion, a beating don't really do nothing, because a child could get beat and still do the same thing over and over again, no matter how hard you beat them, no matter how you beat them. But what's really important is to sit these kids down, talk with them. Hey, why did you do this? And a lot of parents are kind of afraid to tell the kids about what they've been through growing up. I feel as though you sharing some of that stuff with these kids kind of be like, okay, now I see, like, okay, like they messed up, I messed up, I'm a kid. So it kind of gives them like, okay, like we all messed up. But it's all about sitting these kids down and talking to them. Letting these kids say like, okay, why did you throw that chair? Because oftentimes these kids throw a chair and next thing they see is a belt come across their back. So I would just say just sitting kids down, knowing what kids you're dealing with, knowing their past. Okay, if this child is used to being abused and used to being beaten, you may not need to touch that child. Just sit them down, and now you gotta deal with this child in a different way. You can't deal with them in the past how they used to be treated or how they used to be dealt with, but now you gotta find a different way. And in my opinion, I don't think no child. It's just different ways, like different ways. I feel as though you can get creative with it. Like me, when I have sons, they do something wrong, I'm making them do push-ups. You going outside and run. Because now it's not something more like a beating or like a hitting. Now you're doing something physical. So now it's more so like a challenge. Like, okay, so if I know the next time I'm not gonna do this because my dad gonna make me go outside and do push-ups. But it's not gonna be in a way like, oh yeah, like you're in the military, but it's gonna be more so like in a way like, okay, I know I ain't gonna do that again because I'm not trying to go out there and do no suicides. So I would just say get creative and just knowing that child that you're dealing with.
And I would say, to piggyback, I would say with correction and discipline, one thing I learned like a year or two ago is to never discipline your child when you're angry.
That's good.
Because, and I didn't know that, when we growing up, we got so much whoopings, it was
just crazy.
And we used to get a whooping from my dad, from my mom first, and then we had to go to my dad. And when I look back, I was telling my wife, I said, when I look back and I think about the times, all the whoopings we got, I just saw the anger on my parents' face. Like, ain't no way you bringing a belt from all the way back here. If you doing that, you angry. Because I got 3 kids. I would never. But my parents, they was going through so much stuff within them, and I know that the anger was coming out on the kids. So I would just say that's the biggest thing. One thing I learned, they say never do it out of anger. If you gotta wait until that anger cool down, because you want that kid to know that I'm not beating you out of anger, I'm beating you out of love, or I'm disciplining you out of love. If you're gonna correct them, correct them with love, not with anger or with hate, because these kids, they don't deserve that. They don't deserve to feel what you're going through. You shouldn't never put that on your kids because they're kids, they're innocent beings. So I would just say just to never discipline when you're angry.
Well, I just have to throw a disclaimer out there because while I agree with the push-up theory, because that's how my family, my husband was very much that way. Our kids they're great baseball players, and we use physical consequences kind of to help develop them.
Right.
We can't do that in foster care, so just FYI, parents, don't be doing that. One of the things that you said that struck me was you never knew what love was. You never felt it. You never experienced. You didn't even know how to express it to one another until you were in your 20s. What happened? Like, how did you finally learn that? Like, how did
we learn love coming in contact with God once we change our life around, and I feel like that's really the root of love, God. Because God is love, and just coming in contact with our church and so much loving people. And when we first, the church that we attend now, when we first came in, we was 21 at the time, had dreads in our hair and all this stuff. And when we came in and after church, they like hug your neighbor, tell you love them, there's nothing you can do about it. I'm like, I was like, what? Like, cause we wasn't. Of course, we used to get, we get hugs, cause we had a lot of. Me and Davon always had a lot of females. Like we dealt with a lot of females. But as far as like that love from like a parent and stuff, we never got that. But just going to church and seeing everybody giving you hugs, and it's like you feel it, like it's a good hug, it's a true hug, and I'm like, wow, we missed this. I just hate that. We had to wait till we got that age to receive it. Yeah. And it's like, when we got in contact with God, our church, that's when the love came, and we like, wow, this is what love is. This is what love is.
So that's why every kid I come in contact with now, they don't even got to be my kid. I love every child. It's just like if they're mine. I mean, I know I'm nothing but 26, but I try to love these kids because I'm like, man, like I was a child, I missed out on so much love. I didn't find out what love was till I was older. So that's why every kid, I try to spend time with them, have fun with them, and just show them that genuine love. And kids know when somebody love them when they don't, and kids know when somebody care about them and they don't. Like kids in foster care are very observant. That's why you gotta watch how you do things around kids in foster care, because they I promise you, we worked at a group home, so we know, and that's all we do, be around these kids, so they know like, okay, I could trust this staff, I know I can't trust this staff. They know like, okay, this staff, they just here for the money, this staff here because they actually care. And I actually heard kids actually say that, like this staff, they don't care. But because these kids, you gotta think about it, these kids done been from family to family, so they can identify who the real ones and who the fake ones. So love is very important.
I've been told several times by kids that I'm just kids telling me I'm just a piece of paper in your notebook. I used to carry this binder around when I was a foster care coordinator, and I'd take all my notes on it, and they'd tell me I'm just a piece of paper in your binder, and it took not a couple of visits, not a couple of months, not even, it's taken years sometimes to get through to those kids to help them understand you're not just a piece of paper. So one of the things that you said was make sure you're going into it and you know what you're getting into. A lot of times people think that, they've been here for 6 months, so everything should be okay. Everything should be great. So what do you tell those parents that think that 6 months or a year, or, here you guys are 26 and you're still are you still working through some of that
Yeah,
stuff?
most definitely. It's hard. I still haven't had an actual conversation with my biological mom since we met our biological family when we were 17 years old. Haven't had an actual conversation with my biological mom since. She don't talk to us. My biological family, me and Tavon always say I would have been better off if I didn't met my family. That's how we feel like we strangers to our own blood. But I would just say you gotta think about like a seed, like an orange tree, an apple tree. You don't place a seed into the ground and have apples, a full tree, blown tree full of apples in 6 months. It's impossible. It takes some fruit trees years. It takes some months. It takes some more years. But you got to look at it like this: once you start planting that seed, you got to keep watering it. You got to keep doing the things that's needed for that seed in order for that seed to be able to sprout. That seed need dirt, soil. It need sunlight. It need water. It need all these different things in order for that. And that's the same thing with kids, because we all are seeds that were planted. And now all of us are growing, but it's all about what you putting into that seed. The words, I heard this, they were saying that if you get a seed and you speak like negative stuff, or I heard somebody say that something like that happened, they got a seed and they were speaking negative stuff around that seed, and that seed didn't grow. Because what goes on the inside of you can kill whatever on the inside of you for you to grow. So I would just say just keep nurturing these kids, because at the end of the day, these kids are just seeds. So you just got to continue to pour that love into them, and eventually they'll be like, okay. And kids in the system, kids in the system are very smart. Even the ones that the people think that are what people would say dumb, which I don't like using dumb, but you have parents that call kids dumb, which I don't understand. But these kids are very smart. Even the ones that got mental health issues, these kids are smart, because these kids, just like I said, these kids know, like, okay, like this person loved me, and this person only doing it for a specific reason. And these kids are used to, just like I said earlier, going from placement to placement. So they used to people giving up on them, having trust issues. So that's why it's impossible for some of these kids to grow in 6 months, because they still got that wall up. But as you being that parent and a foster parent, you went through training and you went through all this stuff, signed all this paperwork. You can't expect a kid to change in 6 months. I didn't even change in 6 months. So it's just like you just got to continue to be there for that child when they need it.
And I would just say too, just like I said earlier about the broken glass, that's what you're dealing with. And just like I say, in order to put back a broken mirror, it's going to take a long time.
Sort of impossible, honestly.
It's like it always going to be something you piecing. You got to piece and piece, and that's what you have to understand. You got to be patient. You got to take time. Like those big skyscrapers, empires and stuff, that stuff wasn't built in months. That stuff took like years. And the stuff that got the amazing designs and stuff like that, that stuff took a long time. So you have to understand that what you're dealing with right now, you have to be patient and just slow and steady. Take your time and don't give up. Don't give up. Just know that it's gonna be great. That seed, although it's been damaged, it's gonna be great. Just like Davon said, it all depends on what you pour into that seed. So if you make sure you're pouring the right thing into the seed, and that seed will blossom and be beautiful.
So a lot of times, we have really great foster parents. We do have some really great foster parents. And sometimes, when kids become available for adoption, sometimes foster families feel like an obligation to take that next step to offer that permanency. And I heard you saying earlier, do it for the right reasons. Do you feel that, because you don't want this child to go somewhere else or out of obligation, are those good reasons to truly adopt? What would you say is the reason to adopt? I tell parents all the time, if you can't imagine waking up tomorrow without this kid, if you can't imagine your life when they're 30 without them, that's the reason you adopt, because you can't imagine life ever being without them right here with you. You have to have that degree of commitment and love. So So what would you say? You know, there's a difference between obligation and commitment.
Yeah. You go.
Well, I would say that you most definitely have to be committed, just like a marriage. I would use marriage because you wouldn't get married to somebody that you can't see yourself waking up to every morning. Like, and that's the same thing you have to see with these children. You have to know that, wow, like this is gonna be my child legally, like.
Just like vows, to death do us apart, honestly.
So you gotta make sure that this is really what you want, and it's okay if you like, okay, I don't want this. I would rather you be truthful
honest
with yourself, and that was just what Mr. Ted was saying. Like a lot of people, they feel like they're obligated to do it, and really you're not.
Obligated.
It's best that you give them to somebody who's really willing to make that long-term commitment, because that's what it is. So you just got to be willing to understand and acknowledge it. Like, hey, I don't see myself keeping this child for the rest of this time, and hey, that's fine. I would just say just be truthful with yourself and just understand if that's what you want to do it. If that's not what you want to do, don't do it.
And every parent have to understand that some kids are probably only meant to be with you for a season. You know, it's just like it's not winter year round. It's different seasons. You got winter, you got fall, you got summer, you got spring. So that child may only be with you for the summertime in their life. And then, okay, now they got to go to somebody else that's going to fulfill the winter part of their life. So obligation is more so feeling like you're forced to do something that you really don't want to do. Commitment is waking up in the morning and be like, you know what, this is what I want to do. Like me, that's why I quit my job, because I'm like, okay, my commitment is I want it to be towards foster care because that's what I love. So as a parent, you should never feel obligated because kids, just like I said, kids will pick up on that stuff as well. So I would just say, if you're gonna adopt a kid and you see that kid, it's just like if you're talking to a significant other, you know, like, okay, like I can see myself with this person for the rest of my life. And if you can't, okay, it's fine to identify like, okay, I can't. So yeah.
And what do you say to the parent that, maybe early on they thought this was the right fit, they thought this was the right kid, and then, it's not working out, or they now see this child as, a bad child that's no longer a good fit. What should they do? Should they keep writing it out? Should they?
Well, I would say that's like trying to keep a player on your team that not going to be any help to the team. And oftentimes, if a coach identify like, okay, like this player is not a good fit, what they're going to do is they're going to cut them and allow them to become a free agent so they can go to another team. So that's the same thing with parents, but it's kind of like twofold, because just like Tavon said, you got to know what you're getting yourself into. These kids aren't perfect. None of us are perfect. We all still work undone. And that's that's just the good thing about God and the good thing about life. Like, none of us is perfect. We was made from the dirt. But it's just like, just understanding, like, you got to understand, like, okay, before I get this child, you got to understand, like, okay, all the things that I'm dealing with. And I think that's why it's so important for, like, people like myself. And, like, when these kids get our age, that they do the same thing we're doing, because now we're able to give foster parents a view that they haven't been getting. Now you're hearing it from people that actually been through the system instead of people that had to go to school to learn this stuff. I tell people all the time, and I say it very confident, I don't have nothing against counselors, all these different people in the foster care system, but I feel as though they had to go to school to learn that stuff. You could put me in front of any child. I love dealing with the kids that they say the worst. You could put in front of any child, and I promise you I'll make a change. And I had to go to school, but it's because I actually been through that life. So now I can hit these kids from a different approach, and these kids will more so receive people like us versus people that never been in the system, and that's just how it is. But I would just say, you gotta know before, because you gotta think about it. Although you may get these kids and later down the road you be like, and Steve Harvey made a good point, and it's kind of tying with this. He was like, oftentimes in life we got that turning back moment where we always say we're gonna do something, and we get halfway there and we turn back around. So now we're going all the way back to the starting line. That's the same thing with these kids. You can't say, okay, I want to foster or adopt this child, and later on down the road you get in the middle because things start getting rough. You're going through some little trials and errors and different obstacles, and be like, you know what, I don't think this is it, because you got to think about it. Not about just how you may feel. Imagine how that child may feel, because that child could have been like this is my family. And that would really happen a lot of times. Like, a lot of these kids get hooked. It's like you getting a fish hook, and that fish thinking it's like, okay, like, although it's for us, but the fish may be thinking like, dang, like, they got me. So that's how these kids may be, they're like, okay, like, this is my family. But a lot of times they end up unhooking it and throwing the kid right back in the pond. So now that kid back in the pond with thousands of other fishes, now that kid like, dang, it's all these other fishes, it's gonna be impossible for somebody to catch me.
Yeah.
So it's like, now since you change your mind, it's like now that kid that once was happy, now that kid back to step one. So now it's just like now that next person that get them, it may take that next foster parent or adoptive parent 3 to 5 years to get to that child because of something another parent be like, you know what, I changed my mind, I don't think this is the child. So in all reality, it's really just hurting that child, and now that child just like, you know what, I don't want to be with nobody. And that's why you see a lot of kids age out of foster care, become hooked on drugs, or end up getting incarcerated because of something that parent did. That parent ended up changing their mind.
Can you share with us what your relationship is like with your adoptive family today?
It's better.
It's just, I don't know, it just, to me, it still feel like it don't feel right. Like, I mean, we got a pretty decent relationship with our family, but it still don't feel right because it's like, man, like.
Your trust isn't there?
Like, it's like we went all these years, and it's like, even now, since we told them how we felt when we got older, it just feel like the connection's still not really there. I sold a car to a family that came to the dealership about a year ago when I was working at Toyota. And I was in the middle of selling them a car. I was telling my story about growing up in the system, not having a family. And as I'm selling them a car, they crying. Like, it was very emotional. It was Sarah Jane, which is Chandler, which is now my brother. That's his wife. And it was Chandler mom, which is Mama Mandy, and Papa Chuck. They all was there. And I'm telling them my story, they crying, and I'm in the middle trying to, car deal. I'm trying to tell my story, and I'm trying to get this car deal because I know it's going to be pretty decent. I was selling a 4Runner. But, you know, telling them my story, and then they got my number. They was like, blah, blah, blah. So I kind of like, you know, it is what it is, like, whatever. And then they ended up inviting me for Thanksgiving because I wasn't going back home for Thanksgiving. Ended up spending that day with them. And then they adopted me into their family, so now I'm a part of their family. It's only been a year, and these people treat me like they birthed me. I'm 26 years old. It's a white family. People look at me now and be like, oh, I got a white mom and dad. They look at me like I'm crazy, but the crazy part about it, the way how God do things, because growing up, I always tell people my mom was white. And we was from Alaska because we didn't know, so we had to come up with our own little story. But it's crazy because that relationship with our adopted parents, it's just not there. Like, my mom, they don't give us, like, when I go to Mama Mandy, like, she give me a full hug, like, and hold it. I'm like, dang, Mom, you kind of joking me, but that's what I need. And God know what we need, but it's like with our adopted parents, it's just like, and like Tavon was telling me the other day, for Father's Day, he had called my adopted dad, and I'm like, honestly, to tell somebody Happy Father's Day and they not really being a father, to me, it's just like, it's just like, you not, when our birthday come around and stuff like that, y'all don't call us. So it's just like, it's sort of kind of feel like it's forced in a sense. So it just, I mean, it got better over the years, and which we communicate with our adopted parents, which is good, but it just feel like the connection just ain't, I can't even sometimes look at my mom and dad, because years growing up when we was younger, they used to fuss at us so much, so I got to a point of not being able to look people in the eyes. And it's still kind of hard for me now because they used to always just fuss. Always fuss, so I used to never look them in the eye. And even now, to look them in the eye is very, very hard. Very hard. I'm not even gonna lie to you, it's very hard. It's very hard.
I tell my kids that some of us get to be born in families, and some of us get to choose our families.
That's powerful.
Wow.
And I would say, too, Me and Davon talk a lot, and I was just like, dang, God, like, we got taken away from our family. We got placed with a family that didn't give us what we needed.
We met our biological
family. That wasn't, and I'm like, dang, like I'm at an age, I'm 26, and it's like, the stuff that I never got, like when I meet somebody like a older woman or like an older man, and it's like they're like that mother or father figure, I'd be like, wow, like
this is what it like to have a mom figure.
When I get around people that have that in their lives, I be like, man, y'all gotta cherish it.
Cherish it, man.
I'm like, man, people like us.
We 26 and we
don't know what that's like.
To hold our mom hand and to
that's why I give my kids so much love and so much, because I told myself when I was young, I said, whenever I have kids, man, I said I'd never treat my kids the way that my parents treat me. And I give my kids so much love. I'm like, I'd be a fool to treat these pretty girls, and my son, I would be a fool not to, like, how?
It's hard.
It just hurt me. I'm like, dang, bro, I just wish I had that. But it's like, I mean, I'm 26 now, so, but it's like, it's nothing wrong with me saying that, because it's like, we all need a mom and a dad, and it's like, I'm like, that's why I love getting around people that show that love. I'm like, man, although I miss it, I'm enjoying it right now, because it's like, I never had it. So, yeah, that's just the crazy part. Like, we didn't get it growing up. And that's why I say, the powerful thing about me and Davon, we grew up our whole life with expectations. Like, just imagine being told you were adopted at the age of, I think it was like 9 or 10. So now we know. We kind of had an idea, and we putting these thoughts in our head, how our mama look, how our daddy look.
I had a dream one time about this lady that I thought was my mom. And I remember I had that dream, but it wasn't true.
And I'm like,
it was sad,
growing up, and then we like, dang, when we meet them, it's going to be, like, they're going to be so happy to see us. They're going to be, man, when that time came, I'm like, oh, man.
That was really crazy.
Like, we really waited our whole life. And it's like, dang. Like, I mean, just like I said, I thank God for allowing us to meet my family, but it was like, just as a kid growing up, you're like, I wonder if they saying us happy birthday. Like, man, I remember one time, me and Davon was at the window crying. It was around birthday. I was like, man, I wonder if they saying us happy birthday. Like, yeah,
and it's like when we met our biological family, it's like the hype was hype for like a second, and it died down. It's like my biological dad, like, they don't call us. I call my dad now and it hurt me. I be calling my dad, he be like, he don't be knowing who I be. And it's sad because my adopted parents don't really know me and Tavon apart, and my biological parents don't even know us apart. Like, they call Tavon Davon, and I just be like, I used to laugh about it, but I'm looking at it now like, that's sad. Like, y'all don't even know us. Kids that are little can identify us and tell us apart. Like Taylor, she's 2 years old, she knows us apart. But it's just sad because I'm like, dang, y'all don't even know your own sons apart. And my biological family, like, I posted Papa Chuck on for Father's Day, and my biological sister commented on it and stuff like that. I'm just like, y'all don't do it. We've been in Georgia for 6 years, and guess what? They never been in to visit us. They haven't even seen Taylor yet, which is Tavon's youngest daughter. She's 1. They haven't even seen her yet. And it's just sad because we always used to go back to South Carolina to see our family, always going the extra mile, talking about like putting miles on our car to go see our family. And me and Tavon came to the conclusion, like, I can't do that no more. I can't. And they used to eat me up because I'm like, man, like, what they gonna say, how they gonna feel. And I used to be big on that about how other people gonna feel if I share my story. And that's how a lot of these other kids feel too. But I had to get out of that because it's like, man, like, we waited all these years, we finally meet y'all. And it's sad to say, y'all don't do nothing for us. And it hurts, but at the end of the day, and the sad part about our story is we never even got to even meet our grandparents. So we never had grandparents on our adopted side. And when we met our biological family, our grandma and granddad on both sides were already dead. So we don't even know what it feel like to even have grandparents. And that hurt me because I'm like, grandparents is awesome to me. I love talking to older people because it's like now you can learn about your history. Now you can learn about some things that they can teach you how to do bake pies and all type of stuff. And it's like we don't got that, you know, and we didn't receive that. So it's just like it just kind of hurt. But I mean, at the end of the day, look at us now. So that's the most important part of it.
Yep. And just to end it off, we just tell the parents, just make sure you're giving that child what they really need, because you see us as prime examples. We didn't receive it, and it messed us up in a lot of ways that we didn't really want to acknowledge.
Yeah.
And when I got married, my wife was telling me some things, and I'm like, wow. It's crazy when somebody telling you something, and you're like,
You ain't trying to hear
it's
it.
like you know it's true, but it's like, dang, like
Especially as a man.
it's like, dang, I know it's true, but it's like, yeah, I had a messed up past, and but it's like, all that stuff could have been avoided. It could have, but I just thank God that He allows us to go through it, because we're able to connect with kids in such a powerful way. So I would just say, just make sure that you do it for the right reason. You just make sure that you truly love these kids with everything. Love them, take care of them, and just give them the world, man.
Well, I want to thank you guys again for coming and spending some time with us at camp, getting to know our kids, giving our kids another positive role model in their lives that they can look up to, because it is amazing that you guys are doing and have turned out the way that you have. You grew up against all the odds, and it seems like you're really overcoming those odds. And that's something to be very proud of, and very exciting for people like me, because we have 95 kids here. That's 95 kids. That's our future. You know, I'm 40 some years old. That's my future. They're my future. And to have people that are willing to reach out to them, talk to them, show them, you know what, you can overcome. You know, everybody carries around a bunch of crap in their bag. You don't have to let it define you. And to have adults who have experienced it, because that is very important. You know, me sitting here saying X, Y, and Z is totally different than me living it. So thank you very much. We do appreciate you coming out, hanging out, talking to our families, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day here today at camp. All right. Thanks, guys.